How's it hanging, gang? My name is still Kane. I'm here with art drawn by my sister Rose, and I hope to entertain you yet again with a new video. Enjoy!
Gravity Man! Thunder Woman! Sweep it off its feet! Red Rabbit jumped away as another bomb launched out of the giant robot. Exploding on impact, an entire chunk of Times Square's street was obliterated. Gravity Man and Thunder Woman tried to do as they were told, but the robot was much too large. Sensing them, it attempted to smash them with its enormous fist. The two escaped just in time. Behind Red Rabbit were 3 new members of the team, all looking at the robot with caution. "Dimension!" Red Rabbit called. "I suspect a weak spot in the back of its head. Teleport up there and make sure." Isn't that robot an Ionic Forge villain?" asked Dimension, a young woman dressed in teal. "No, worse," responded Red Rabbit. "It's a Nova villain. Fusillade, they call it." "I don't know, Red. You can do it," she assured, looking into her eyes. "We know you can." Dimension took a deep breath and fiddled slightly with a keyboard attached to her wrist. Suddenly, a swirling black portal opened up, and Dimension was gone. Before the robot could process what it had just witnessed, Dimension reappeared right on the back of its gargantuan head. She noticed an oddly colored spot on the back of its neck and gave Red Rabbit a shrug. Red Rabbit gave a thumbs up back and turned to Sentry Silver. "Knew it. All the toy robots my kids play with have batteries right in the back." Before she could respond, Red Rabbit turned to the spindly hero dressed in purple cloth. "Cosmos, get Thunder Woman up there and have her zap the spot open." "Nira." "What? Thought Cosmos. "It is understood." He flew towards Thunder Woman and stated the plan. Narrowly avoiding another missile from Fusillade, Cosmos picked her up by the arms. Glowing yellow, he shot forward in the sky directly to where he needed to go. "What can I do?" said Gravity Man to his leader. "Nothing as of now," responded Red Rabbit. "Don't want your gravity messing with Cosmos." Gravity Man gave a nod and stood aside. "Dimension!" shouted Red Rabbit. "Teleport back down!" Dimension followed orders before addressing Soldier Gold and Sentry Silver. "One of you should go up there and make sure they don't get hurt," she said quietly. "You know, 'cause the robot saw them." Soldier Gold, being the one with powers at the time, flew off. "Thanks, kid. Good call." Red Rabbit looked at Dimension with pride. "Great job. I mean that. Told you could do it." Dimension blushed. I do what I can." A loud bang sounded as Thunder Woman hit the weak spot. Or so she thought it was. "Missile launcher!" shouted Thunder Woman as Cosmos screamed. "How many guns can one robot have?" Cosmos glowed yellow and burst away again, saving both of them from a disastrous explosion. The missile, however, launched itself right into the path of a small group of civilians. "Soldier!" Red Rabbit screamed at the top of her lungs. "Quick! Save them! Force field!" Soldier Gold used his super speed to put himself between the people and the missile and constructed a force field to protect them. The bomb exploded, but nobody was harmed. "How are the streets not cleared yet?" she shouted before signaling the team's last new member. He was a young man wearing a ghostly combination of blue and wispy green. Tapping on the collar around his neck, Yapparition summoned 3 green immaterial dogs. Despite being ghosts, they looked as lively as any dog. "Risa, Chip, Buddy, lead the people to safety, okay?" The dogs looked at him and quickly did what they were told. Fusillade tried to attack the people again, but Soldier Gold and Yapparition's dogs were clearing the streets faster than Fusillade could process. Fusillade beeped in frustration, and then proceeded to open up an enormous compartment in its chest. To the heroes' horror, an enormous ticking bomb was released. "Somebody, prevent the bomb from being launched!" Red Rabbit shouted, kicking a smaller missile away. "Thunder Woman, zap the—" It was too late. The giant bomb was launched, set to land right in the middle of the city. "No!" the heroes shouted. Gravity Man tried to make a field around the bomb, but it was moving too fast. For a split second, the heroes believed that the bomb was about to eradicate the thousands of people in the middle of Times Square. However, that wasn't the case. A completely new superhero from the top of a building turned his arms into a viscous purple goo. Reshaping them into lassos, he grabbed a perfect hold of the bomb and just narrowly prevented it from hitting the public. Although confused, the heroes were so grateful. "Get out of the way!" he yelled, concerned. Dimension opened a portal and the heroes all jumped in. The portal took them right where the stranger was standing. In an instant, the stranger whipped the bomb right back at Fusillade. The robot was blown up and put completely out of commission. The day was saved. The team of heroes exchanged high fives and phrases of relief before turning to thank the stranger. The stranger, however, was gone.
The gods that have shaped the earth hardly ever engage with individual mortals. Bruno Tolmut, however, can confidently say that he's met them. From his childhood in Madison Avenue, Bruno was always a dog lover. He and his baby sister are practically obsessed. He had a collection of dog-based stuffed animals all crammed into his room. He even had a dog spanning throughout his childhood named Mrs. Snoutfire. While being a decently social kid, Bruno was much better at making friends with dogs roaming on the streets. He was always partial to the abandoned, likely mistreated dogs that needed his help the most. His mom, dad, and baby sister admired this quality in him and are very supportive of his endeavors. After receiving barely passing grades in high school, Bruno began to grow a bit upset and lacked confidence. This is when his parents introduced him to the Helping Paw dog shelter and told him that he could apply for an internship if he would like. This changed Bruno's attitude completely. He became the embodiment of kindness and confidence. Even on days when he wasn't getting paid, Bruno would spend a lot of time hanging out with the dogs. The staff and him developed a close bond, but not as close as Bruno became with some of those dogs. On his way back home from working at his beloved dog shelter, Bruno discovered something appalling on the train tracks. Helplessly tied down was a beat-up, traumatized dog that was left for dead. The train was approaching quickly, and Bruno knew what he had to do. Risking it all to save the dog, his plan was to lunge forward and push the dog away from the tracks, but this isn't exactly what happened. Instead, the train ran over both Bruno and the dog when he was mid-lunge. That was the moment Bruno Tolmut died. Bruno ended up awakening in the afterlife. Well, not yet. He woke up to begin the journey to the afterlife. He noticed a dog who he failed to save was right beside him, even through all the horrors they've seen. The journey to the afterlife, or duat as it's known, is a long and perilous process. To start, one must somehow defeat or escape from enormous golden monsters. Using some of his agility to his advantage, Bruno chose to escape the monsters rather than fighting them. Next was to appease the 42 judges that can omnipotently observe every mortal's actions all of the time. They only deem you worthy of moving forward if you can explain all of your wrongdoings and prove your heart is in the right place. If every single one of the 42 judges agrees, you can move on. Bruno was lucky to live a mostly fulfilling life, and his dog was obviously pure because dog. Bruno and his canine companion completed all of the necessary challenges before facing the divine beings known as Anubis and Thoth. Both had the most important responsibility in the entire duat, physically measure a heart's purity. Before they could, however, both gods were surprised to see Bruno in the afterlife, stating that it wasn't his time yet and the death wasn't meant to befall him. The dog, however, must stay in doggy heaven. Opening up the duat gate specifically for dogs, Bruno watched as hundreds of wispy canines barked and jumped to welcome the new dog. It was the most beautiful thing Bruno had ever seen. Then the duat gate closed. Anubis offered Bruno a chance to go back to the material plane, which he decided was best. Bruno had always wanted to make a lasting impression on the world, and dying here would be anticlimactic. After returning to the material plane, Bruno felt different. Almost instantly, he could see why. After gazing at the duat gate of the dogs, he could see all the spiritual hounds walking around amongst the humans. Unlike fully sentient beings who are pretty much trapped in the duat to avoid causing trouble, lesser animals such as dogs still have a choice to walk around the humans they love so much. Seeing all the ghost dogs trying to get attention from humans who can't even see them, Bruno made an important decision. Petting his duat companion on the head, who had never left his side, Bruno decided to train all of the ghost dogs to have a greater purpose even after death. Trying to figure out how to better communicate with a ghost dog, his companion suddenly barked and made follow-me gestures. Bruno was confused when the ghost dog led him back to the train tracks that had been the cause of their deaths until he saw the dog's collar. Demonstrating something incredible, it stored her comfortably, similar to a Pokeball. Plus, after the dog came out of the collar, a bystander gasped in awe. Bruno found out all at once that ghost dogs can interact with their collars and can become visible after they do so. This would work perfectly with his decision, to train all of the ghost dogs to fight crime with him. Sure, it sounded far-fetched, but imagine training a fleet of dogs that can't physically get hurt in battle. Physically and spiritually. Weeks passed, and Bruno went with a punny vigilante epithet Yapparition. Commanding a bunch of different breeds of ghostly dogs all stored comfortably in the collar around his neck, Bruno had never felt so alive. That is, until a certain rabbit-like superhero hopped into his world all at once, asking him to join a whole superhero team. How on earth could he say no? Bruno Tolmut, amazingly, had a close encounter with godly beings. However, Lucy Anders' powers all stem from an absence of godly power. When the universe was created by Ra, all sorts of nothingness was reshaped into a large and plentiful image of reality. Some antimatter, however, was pushed back and collected into what can only be described as a black hole. This vessel of corruption is known as the Lahith vacuum. While most believe the Lahith vacuum to be a simple black hole, it actually holds properties of interdimensional transport, dimensions of which were never touched by Ra's grace. Lucy Anders is an introverted young woman from Elmira, having spent her whole childhood there as well. Her mother is a well-known astronaut who spends lots of her time working for NASA. This often led to Lucy, an only child with no friends, being home alone. She was never spiteful about this and quite enjoyed the peaceful and quiet space. Lucy now lives in her own apartment, shockingly close to home, with no idea how she's going to provide for herself. Through most of her life, Lucy always had one goal burning in her mind: to be more like her mother. Her mother received international recognition for collecting reality-warping space dust straight from the Lahith vacuum and bringing it to Earth in a simple jar. Lucy, on the other hand, used to find raising her hand in class to be an overwhelming accomplishment. Her mother was loud, beautiful, strong, and courageous, where Lucy thought of herself as quiet, reserved, weak, and cowardly. When noticing Lucy's constant deprecation of herself, her mother decided to take action. The next day at her mother's work, Lucy was brought along. Lucy could tell that, even though she was no longer a child, the other astronauts thought of her as one. They didn't say anything because nobody in their right mind would mess with Mrs. Anders' kid. Lucy found herself overwhelmed by all the space stuff surrounding her and sat down in a corner to observe everything going on. She vowed not to move, but discovered something that changed her mind. A young astronaut a little older than her, quaking in his boots, absolutely terrified. The other astronauts didn't even seem to notice their colleague's mental state, causing Lucy to go over and console him. The astronaut introduced himself as Robbie Mooney and refused to admit to being scared and anxious. However, something about Lucy's calm and considerate demeanor made him open up. Lucy listened carefully when Robbie talked about his feelings. It was his first day as an astronaut, so he felt displaced among the more professional astronauts. As if instinctual, Lucy relaxed Robbie by telling him not to put so much pressure on himself during his first day, and so many others feel the same way during their first experiences. For instance, she says with a smile, "This is my first time talking to another human." Laughing like a llama, Robbie thanked Lucy and said she'd make a good therapist. This is a suggestion that made Lucy stop and think about her future. A therapist, huh? Before any more time passed, an alarm sounded in the room. The intercom squealed as a voice said, "Earthquake protocol! Everybody, get down!" All of the other astronauts did as they were told, so Lucy and Robbie followed suit. Together under a table, they closed their eyes and prayed that it would be over soon. Suddenly, a ghostly and immaterial substance whisked into the room. The other astronauts stayed calm about the earthquake, but all held their breath in horror upon seeing the dust. Ruth," one of them said to Lucy's mom, "is that the stuff you collected from the Lahith?" "The jar must have cracked open because of the earthquake," she responded. As if alive, the black mist seemed to observe every panicked astronaut still crouched because of the earthquake. It phased around trying to understand its earthbound surroundings. Freaking Lucy out, she decided to do something that not even her mother would do. During an earthquake, Lucy stood up and made the most assertive pose she possibly could. She shouted threats at the mist to leave the station immediately and go back up to space where it came from. The mist stopped wisping and floated still. Abruptly, it lunged itself right into Lucy's chest. Lucy screamed in horror as she fell backwards and landed uncomfortably on the floor. The other astronauts saw the whole thing and had no explanation. Could a human have possibly absorbed the fragment of the universe's oldest and most complicated black hole? After the earthquake subsided, Lucy started to panic, but the other astronauts assured her that everything was okay. In fact, the whole team was now capable of making the scientific breakthrough of the century. While trying to exert her power, the team watched in fascination as a small black orb materialized in her hand. It wisped and churned like the Lahith vacuum does, meaning that Lucy was holding a portal to another dimension. News stories about the Lahith girl became so popular, Red Rabbit tracked her down to see for herself. She discovered that the girl was Lucy Anders and she had no control of her new powers. Red Rabbit said she could help her control them in exchange for her service in ISH. ISH, that is. Dimension can open portals for teleportation and can summon bizarre creatures from other dimensions, using the latter only as a last resort as these creatures are hard to control and bring back home. The creation of the universe, the afterlife, alternate dimensions? What other mysteries are left to discover? Well, apparently an entire solar system neighboring ours. Ra can monitor our every action through his two eyes. His observant eye, the yellow soul, warms our solar system. However, his blind eye, the white Sala, warms a completely different one. Everything to the left of our universe is known as the Solverse, where everything to the right is known as the Soliverse. All of the 6 planets in the solar system hold life, the third one being the place of origin for Falgi Snick. Falgi is an alien known as an Otpal, once residing among others of his kind in a planet known as Geelon Geege. Geelon Geege is a mostly flat planet, with only a few enormous mountains separating the mineral landscape. The gravity is ridiculously heavy, so most creatures from this planet are smaller than humans and live only a few years. Otpal are among their biggest and oldest species, being roughly human-sized and living up to 30 years. Geelon Geege is a bizarre planet, mainly because of the Otpal society. These skinny, pale aliens build their society based on other aliens' lifestyles, using a pick-and-choose method to decide which parts of other alien societies to incorporate into their own. For example, their language built around phrases rather than individual words is almost directly inspired by the Gruan's language, the Otpal's planetary neighbors. How do Otpal implement their societal beliefs? It's all built around roles. The travelers journey across galaxies in sleek metallic space pods to observe other aliens, being watched over by the monitors. The monitors are told everything about these alien societies, and they are in charge of picking and choosing the best parts about them. Lastly, they report a proclamation to the Voices, the Otpal's leaders, who decide what customs to implement and when. Lastly, the Voices call the travelers and instruct them on where to go next. The Otpal's entire society is built around this system. Falgi Snick's story starts with his job as a traveler. Travelers such as Falgi Snick are usually sent to report on aliens of the solar system, only occasionally visiting the solar system and other galaxies. Having never seen it before, Falgi was overjoyed when being appointed to a mission to the solar system. Specifically, some unknown and obscure planet called, you probably haven't heard of it, it's called Earth. Does that sound a bit familiar? When Falgi was appointed to Earth, he was unintentionally sent right in the middle of the Big Apple. In the safety of his space pod, Falgi watched in absolute amazement when he saw a whole bunch of superheroes using their abilities to fight crime. He saw Red Rabbit kicking a thief, Gravity Man lifting them up, Thunder Woman shocking them from Gravity Man's grasp, Soldier Gold and Sentry Silver bashing criminals' heads together, the Apparition sending ghostly dogs on them, and Dimension teleporting one of them closer to punching distance. It was the most breathtakingly beautiful thing Falgi had ever seen. Although incredibly excited about these superheroes, Falgi was also incredibly upset about all the criminals he saw. Otpal society was still so young and in line, whereas human society was littered with crime and disorder. This required more intensive studying. Abandoning his post, Falgi adorns a bunch of oversized human cloaks and tries to make his way in human society. The lighter gravity was a lot to get used to, as he had to prevent himself from floating about. Throughout his journey around the Big Apple, Falgi learned a lot about the English language, ways to spend money, how to avoid conflict, and so much more. Falgi also discovered a bunch of fascinating collectibles from Earth and is taken to hoarding them. When hearing a gunfight start up outside his apartment, Falgi went outside and tried to calm the situation. Rather than following his advice, the two people pointed their guns directly at him. I suppose he never did master avoiding conflict. Out of instinct, Falgi shook his hands around to signal, "Stop," but something bizarre happened. Yellow beams of star-shaped projectiles launched out and swiftly knocked the weapons out of the people's hands. They ran away from Falgi, who was in absolute awe. Flying around and zapping all the litter he saw with star-shaped projectiles, the weird cloaked human attracted a lot of attention. Specifically from Red Rabbit, who approached Falgi and asked him what exactly he was doing there. Misunderstanding the extent of Red Rabbit's question, Falgi told her his entire story. He explained to her that he just wanted to help this beautiful planet flourish, and Red Rabbit was enchanted. Just like with the Apparition in Dimension, Red Rabbit went to the couturier and had a costume made for Falgi to help protect his alien identity. Because of his spatial origins and star-shaped projectiles, Falgi adopted the name Cosmos. Cosmos now fights crime alongside his superhero friends and is overwhelmed with joy and intrigue as he does so. His big eyes allow for some natural night vision, and his skinny form helps him squeeze into tight spaces that humans wouldn't normally be able to. The monitor, who's watching over Cosmos, remains livid that he abandoned his post, but the voices ensure that what Cosmos does for Earth is admirable and exemplary. The different gravity of Earth is what gives Cosmos his powers, being flight, starblade projection, and shooting star. Shooting star is an ability that fills Cosmos' form with intense energy, causing him to briefly glow yellow and propel quickly through the air. The gravity of Earth theoretically gives these powers to any Opal who comes in contact with it. If the gravity is disturbed, their powers cease to work. Funny enough, this includes the gravitational fields made by Gravity Man. Because Cosmos and Gravity Man often have to work around each other's fighting styles, the two don't get along as well as the others. Still being friends, the two just can't seem to understand each other. Being an Opal, Cosmos absorbs oxygen through gill-like tenidia around his neck. Because Geelon Geege has a lot more oxygen than Earth, eating can be a lot harder for him on our planet. Rather than just taking a large breath in and a large breath out like he would at home, he now has to gasp in and out at least 8 times to get a full meal. Eating human food can possibly choke him unless it's tasted through comically small bites. Still, Cosmos prefers not to eat human food. Also, don't worry. The gravity of Earth also enhances Cosmos' lifespan, meaning he'll live longer than 30 years. He'll live as long as humans usually do, 70 to 80 years. It can be difficult to conceal your identity as both a superhero and an alien. Cosmos manages to handle himself with pride and stride. Sometimes he flies by himself at night, entranced by the stars. He tells the team, ISH, that he does this purely for fun, when in reality, Cosmos is just a bit homesick. Not too homesick to enjoy Earth, though. Does the public know that Cosmos is actually an alien? Well, not exactly, but they know of aliens. Many world leaders from Earth, especially Mayor Dipley of the Big Apple, are required to communicate with alien world leaders on an annual basis. Once every 3 years, an intergalactic meeting is held between Mayor Dipley, the Neptunian King, and all of the solar system's various leaders. This meeting is held in a bizarre interspatial building known as the Star Station. So, in short, the public knows of aliens, but are completely unaware of any living among them. Cosmos fears what could happen if anyone were to find out, and what harmful labels they could pin him as if they did. So, he devised an elegant solution. Whenever not in costume, Cosmos wears a baggy assortment of discarded jackets and sweatshirts to conceal his Apolite appearance. When Cosmos is seen flying through the skies fighting crime with ISH, the public just assumes he's some sort of mutant underneath the mask. See, mutants are somewhat common in the Big Apple, often using their abnormal physical traits as advantages in combat. And while Cosmos does have natural night vision, and his powers do come from a shift in the atmosphere biologically stimulating his body, so when you look at it that way, Cosmos is a mutant. One of over 10,000 similar mutants making up an alien species, that is. You heard that right. Compared to the billions of people on Earth, there are only about 10,000 Opal and Geelon Geege. They're a very efficient society, and take to reproducing only after everything else has been attended to. Falgi Snick was born an only child, which is fairly uncommon among Opals. They can spit up over 7 babies in one pregnancy. Yes, they spit up their babies. And taking from how an Opal can't even swallow anything besides carbon dioxide, you can imagine the biological strain it takes for a female Opal to give birth. Cosmos will assure you that infant Opals are cute. However, they look somewhat transparent and slippery, with hardly existent eyes and a constant need to move around and stimulate themselves. Just imagine an Opal's equivalent of a tadpole, only becoming a more traditional Opal after 3 years of drastic transition. Moving on from that thought, let's discuss one more thing about the Opal. When they travel to different planets, they assign themselves a name suited to that planet's culture. Therefore, Falgi Snick masquerades around the Big Apple as Benji Snyder, as that is what the Opal deemed to be a normal human name. As normal as any adorable alien freakazoid could ever be. So fun fact, there was so much to be said about these characters in terms of special abilities, there was no room to cohesively fit in their personalities, so with that being said, here they are. Yapparition is an honest and humorous superhero whose passion is endless. Despite being out there and superpowers and having been one of the few mortals to ever meet the gods, Yapparition can be pretty humble and conserved if he chooses to be. His love for dogs still burns brightly within him, and he tries to make individual time with every single one of the dozens of dogs he's adopted in his collar. Yapparition is one of the Big Apple's most versatile heroes, as his only limits are what he can train dozens of dogs to pull off. Outside of costume, his personality stays mainly the same. He's always an alert and active young man. He's also a family man, often taking the responsibility of caring for his 6-year-old sister, Bella. Yapparition fights alongside his friends with all the determination in the world. Dimension is an introverted hero who became fast friends with Yapparition for his open personality. She's into a variety of somewhat embarrassing things, such as saucy webcomics or outrageous animes, and sometimes struggles with maintaining self-confidence. As a therapist, she's really good at listening to people and giving them advice, much better at helping others than herself. Dimension suffers from imposter syndrome due to the circumstances of getting her powers, believing it to be nothing more than a lousy coincidence. She believes that someone braver or more knowledgeable, such as literally everybody at NASA, should be calculating portal precision and fighting crime. After fighting alongside Red Rabbit just once, her mother's astronaut team instantly recognized Dimension as Lucy Anders. After witnessing her failing to place her portals in the right place, the team put everything on hold to try and help her. They ended up making a portable keyboard that can fit over her shoulders, that told Lucy what dimension the portal leads to, and where she can place it. This led to Lucy gaining incredible control over her portals. When not being a superhero, Lucy is undergoing some college training on how to be an effective therapist. Cosmos is an adorable superhero who's filled with wonder and fascination about everyday activities for humans. In headquarters, his favorite thing to do in his free time is play with the sink, which Thunder Woman finds adorable. One thing he loves to do is hoard human items in his dingy, abandoned basement-level apartment. This more than somewhat disgusting living arrangement doesn't bother him at all, mainly because he's usually out and about anyway. Out collecting human objects and hoarding them in his apartment, that is. Among Falji's favorite human objects are some coins, an old hat once belonging to a hot dog vendor, some pineapple-shaped sunglasses, and a purple umbrella. My goodness, he adores that umbrella. However, he believes that it's a tool used for theatrical dances, rather than for protection against the rain. Together, Yapparition, Dimension, and Cosmos are known as the team's Rookies, acting like a trio of crazy siblings amidst all the Big Apple's craziness. Despite the three having different backgrounds and also having surprisingly different personalities and life goals, it's rare to see superheroes complete each other, quite like the Rookies do. I mean, the three are together as much as the Quantum Couple are. Okay, maybe not quite that much, but you get my point. Inside and outside of costume, the three tried to hang out together as much as possible. The media has really started to enjoy seeing the three together, and loves them for how obviously their personalities shine through during battle. Despite this, the Rookies aren't quite as trusted as the big three, Red Rabbit, Gravity Man, and Thunder Woman. Simply because they're still only young adults at the end of the day. However beloved they are, no superhero in the foreseeable future will procure such citywide trust and respect as those three names. All that they've done, all that they've fought for, all they have yet to achieve. Aware of their place as newer heroes, the Rookies stay humble and willing to learn from the big three. Somewhat coincidentally, Yapparition ended up learning the most from Red Rabbit, Dimension from Gravity Man, and Cosmos from Thunder Woman. From Red Rabbit, Yap learned how to conserve his own energy while having fun and motivating others. From Gravity Man, Dimension learned how to better manage her feelings of doubt and wild emotions during the heat of battle. And from Thunder Woman, Cosmos learned, well, he sure learned a lot about Earth's weird niche hobbies. Thanks to all of their training, it's safe to assume that the Rookies will be sticking with ISH. And hopefully, so will you. Thanks for watching! You can still contact me under the username DanimalMagnetism on Discord if you would like to help. All lowercase, no space, like Animal Magnetism but with a D. A bit of a spoiler here, I do have a basic framework for some of the other aliens of the solar system, but I'm not an expert about that sort of thing. Again, I have a basic framework, but I think some help from one of you beautiful nerds out there would be of great assistance. It's not crucial to the project as of yet, but feel free to reach out if that sounds like you. Thank you, and take care.